US Secretary of State Mike Pompeo is back in the US after his visit to Saudi Arabia, also a brief visit to Turkey. He doesn't seem to have brought back much clarity. If anything, it seems like he's trying to give the Saudis some more time. But at the same time, of course, we have Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin pulling out of next week's big investment conference in Saudi Arabia. What's going on here?
Yeah, well, the two things there, I think, that are important, which suggest that, again, there's another flip-flop taking place in the mind of Donald Trump. Because he started off being critical and talking about severe consequences for the Saudis, because it looked, in his view, several days ago, as if Mr. Khashoggi had been killed in the Saudi consulate. Then he went back on that, said innocent until proven guilty, made those bizarre comparisons with Judge Kavanaugh before his nomination to the Supreme Court. And now we're in a situation where we were several days ago, where he's talking again about the possibility of severe consequences for the Saudi authorities and saying the situation looks really bad, really bad. I think what's probably happened is a couple of things. First of all, the return of Mike Pompeo from Saudi Arabia and in particular from Turkey. When he came back, he wasn't particularly forthcoming, but it does seem as though he came back with evidence from the Turkish authorities, the sort of stuff that's being drip-fed into the state-run Turkish media over the last few days, which seems again to have turned Donald Trump's mind. But also I think what's important is the changing mood within the United States itself, particularly in Congress, where a real, genuine anger seems to be building up towards Saudi Arabia and what has happened. I think that has been important. It's also, of course, the international context. We've seen the British, the French, the Dutch, and Emmanuel Macron saying that political visits to Saudi Arabia will be put off now, joining Germany, Britain and Holland again, until there is clarification.
And what about the Saudis in all this? What are they doing? What are they not doing, perhaps more importantly?
Well, it's interesting again, that Mike Pompeo is calling for time, but as a US congressman put it, if someone was killed in your house and you were there, and 15 days later you're still saying you don't know what happened, I pretty well know in that circumstance what happened. I think that is the view increasingly around the world. So the Saudis are really, I think, looking for time to come up with a credible story, counter-narrative, which will get them off the hook and perhaps make it possible for the Crown Prince to carry on in his role and for Saudi-US relations to stay on track. The latest leak that we're getting from Saudi Arabia and also from the White House is they're beginning to point the finger at General Ahmed al-Assisi, who's a very senior man in Saudi intelligence, close to the Crown Prince, a former spokesman on the Saudi intervention in Yemen, who's now, it's being suggested, was the man who may have given the go-ahead for this trip, having spoken first to the Saudi Crown Prince, but got the wrong end of the stick. This seems to be the drift of the story. But if that's the case, they're trying to put the blame on a man. Is he prepared to take the blame? Is the rest of the world going to buy this story? It seems a little unlikely at this stage.